killed myself 'cause you wouldn't all wrapped in my sweatshirt. Wonder if you even noticed that that one was yours. And maybe I should've, but I never told you I'm sorry. Know that I tried, but my words always got in the way. Could you hold me without any talking? We could try to go back where we started. I don't even have to stay. I don't even have to stay. But if I woke up with you in the morning, I'd forget all the ways that were broken. I don't care if you've changed. I don't even have to stay. I don't remember the last time I heard from your sister. Didn't expect to, but I sort of thought that I would. Wish I could tell you by now that I felt more indifferent. Catch myself thinking about you more than I should. And maybe I should've, but I never told you I miss you. I almost said it, but don't know if you feel the same. Could you hold me without any talking? We could try to go back where we started. I don't even have to stay. I don't even have to stay. But if I woke up with you in the morning, I'd forget all the ways that were broken. I don't care if you've changed. I don't even have to stay.
I see the starlight through the clouds. Why won't anybody listen to me? Don't make me say it again out loud. Big star doing, don't worry, baby. Bipolar pride, swim in the tide. Keep your dead head above and your chin up. You're gonna have a pretty hard time. Without drugs, without love, total submission. I've seen a vision. Everyone's screaming, I've been daydreaming. Sorry I'm fishing without permission. Tell her I'm missing in a serpentine prison.
Where it began, I can't begin to know it, but then I know it's growing strong. Wasn't the spring, and spring became the summer. Who'd have believed you'd come along? Touching hands, reaching out, touching me, touching you. Sweet Caroline, good times never look at the night, and it don't seem so lonely. We fill it up with only two. And when I hurt, burden runs off my shoulders. How can I hurt when holding you?
Hi, Tracy. Tracy.
Warm, touching warm.
Did you grow up in full trouble?
Reaching out, touching me, touching you.
Or maybe
Sweet Caroline, good times never seem so good.
was the whole one in one age?
I've been inclined to believe there never was. No, no. Sweet Caroline, good times never seem so good. Sweet Caroline, I believe they never could. Sweet Caroline, good times never seem so good.
Good morning. I'd just like to let everybody know that this service is being live streamed. So on behalf of the family of Pamela Stanieg, I thank you for joining us here today as we say farewell to Pam, known and loved by many. The hardest part of loving someone is saying goodbye. Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give, but you can't. All that unspent love gathers up in the corners of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and the hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with nowhere to go. We each deal with our grief differently, and it may show up in different ways. And I remind you all that there's nothing that we can do to take away the pain of grief. We can soften it, though, by being a friend, by being there and lending a hand, even when you haven't been asked. Grief is a journey that should not be walked alone. Our memories build a special bridge when loved ones have to part, to help us feel they are with us still and soothe our grieving hearts. They span the years and warm our lives, preserving ties that bind. Our memories build a special bridge and bring us peace of mind. One thing that I've learned about Pam is that she was very organised and extremely practical, to the point where today you will hear her eulogy mostly penned by herself. And this will be shared with us by her children and their partners. So I'll start by asking Mark and Kirsty to come forward, please.
Righto. Again, thanks all for coming. So I'll struggle through this, see how we go. How does that sound? Yeah. All right, so Pamela Stanieg, near Walton, was born at the Lady Musgrave Hospital in Maryborough on the 22nd July 1939. She was the ninth child of a family of 10, born to James and Eleanor Walton, near Atkinson. Her siblings were Bill, May, who's with us today, Joyce, Jean, Iris, John, Jim, Richard and Sylvia. The Walton family left Maryborough and relocated to Mackay when Mum was only 3 years old. Her father worked for Charlie Hodge at Cremorne making parts for farm machinery. After shifting houses a few times around Mackay, the family settled in Grendon Street, North Mackay. Mum attended the North Mackay State Primary School from Prep 1 through to Prep 4, then Grade 1 to Grade 5. After that she attended intermediate school, which is now Mackay Central, from 6 to 7. Mum left school after grade 7 at 14 years of age and commenced working, serving at the counter of Hanson's grocery store in Grendon Street, as well as attending night school for at least a year to learn typing at Mrs. Williams' night school. Mum left Hanson's grocery store after 6 months and commenced work at J. Mitchellmore & Co. as an office and message girl. She worked there for 6 years, advancing through various positions, including sorting dockets, invoice typist, bigger country invoice typist, on the telephone exchange, and into typing accounts for the ledger machines. Working at Mitch Moore's at the same time as Bev McGill, who's also with us today. Mum attended dances with all the girls from Mitch Moore's, which are held at the Parish Hall every Friday night, at Glenella Hall every Saturday night, and then on to Bakers Creek Hall every Sunday night. After various romantic dalliances, Pam met Cecil Stanieg, our dad, at one of the Friday night dances at the Parish Hall, just across from Mackay City Cinemas. She was introduced to Cess through her good friend Bev McGill, as Bev's sister Merle was going out with Cess's brother Cobber at the time. Mum would ride a push bike to the dance and Dad would put it in the back of the ute and drive her home. Very often he also had a few more. Merle's bike, Bev's, Nola's and Agnes' bikes in there as well. Pam and Cess would visit Lambert's Lookout after dances for alone time. I'll change that. Hands over the ears, kids. Mum and Dad were together for approximately 6 months until Dad proposed. It wasn't a momentous occasion. Mum knew it was coming, evidently. To make it official, they made an appointment a couple of nights later at Andrew's Treasure Store in Wood Street to pick out the ring. It was a big jewellery store and was the place to go at the time. They then went back to Lambert's Lookout so Dad could put the ring on Mum's finger. Mum and Dad were engaged for approximately 12 months until they married on the 19th of November 1960. The ceremony was at the Central Methodist Church, Alistair Street, Mackay, and the reception was at the RSL in Sydney Street. Bev's mother, Emily, catered. She was a wonderful cook, and sandwiches and savouries and cakes were all on the menu. There was no real sit-down meals at weddings back in those days. Mum's bridesmaids were her sister Sylvia and her best friend Bev McGill. They wore beautiful dresses of embossed green satin and fresh flowers. Dad's niece, Diane Summers, was her flower girl. Best men were Charlie McLennan and Dad's brother Cobber, who looked smart in their black suits and wax apple blossoms in their coat buttonholes. After the wedding ceremony, the wedding party had official photos taken at Graham's photography studio in Wood Street before heading back to the RSL for the reception. There were many speeches and lots of music. The honeymoon was at Serena Beach, and they stayed in a house 1 street back from the beach for about a week. For all of you that knew the old man, he didn't like the water. He did have a swim at the beach, and while there, Mum took a photo, which he kept as a record. So Mum and Dad bought an old wooden caravan from Brisbane about 6 months before the wedding and brought it back to Mackay so they could do it up. Mum's brother Jim was very handy at carpentry and he helped them there. And after the honeymoon, they travelled down in the caravan to Maroopna, near Shepparton in Victoria, to do the fruit season, where they worked at the Admonis cannery, canning apricots, pears, peaches, and lived in the caravan park. Their good friends Tommy and Lorna Jones also worked at the cannery and lived in the caravan, so they had lots of fun. For 4 years, they alternated, spending 6 months down in Victoria working the cannery, then a few months back in Mackay for Dad to cart cane. Mum went to work at Douglas Gibbon Lewis Accountants, doing land tax forms and all the wages for the farmers. The farmers would bring in their bin weight slips for Mum, and she had to work out how much to pay them, and it said she was very popular. One year, Mum and Dad were down Victoria early before the fruit picking season started. Mum worked at a textile factory and helped fold and pack flannelette pyjamas and red corduroy dresses with white collars and cuffs. She had lots of fun, and the girls would take their records into work, in which they'd play all day long. After the fruit was finished one year, Mum and Dad went to Tasmania for a holiday and stayed with their sister Jean and Jean's husband Charlie Leach at Sandy Cove near Hobart. They stayed for a week using Charlie's car to drive around and look at the place, and it said Mum just loved it. Mum and Dad then moved into a worker's house at Marion in 1965. Dad worked on a farm there, and Mum caught the bus into town to work at the office as head cashier at Fields department store in Victoria Street. Mum soon fell pregnant with Rodney and left work, as he did back then. Mum and Dad then bought a property in Bloomsbury with Snow and Bev McGill. They lived in the house on the property while Snow and Bev lived in Cuttable, as they had the butcher shop there. Dad also worked on properties while Mum stayed at home and looked after the babies and had more. In August 1966, Rodney was born, followed later by Scott in February 1970 and myself, December 1972. Mum and Dad eventually started a small dairy. The milk was delivered to the rail motor about 6 o'clock in the morning. The milk they had left over was separated and they sold the cream on. Made tons of butter for sale as well. Mum said she developed muscles she didn't know she had from turning the hand separator. Unfortunately, in 1970, Cyclone Ada came ripping through and blew their house down with them in the car underneath it. Mum was 8 months pregnant with Scott at the time. They managed to get out and Dad got the tractor somehow and took Mum and Rodney to the dairy, which had lost its roof but still had a ceiling. Mum and Rodney had to crawl into the refrigerator to keep warm. Luckily it wasn't on at the time. And Dad thought the time was right. They climbed in the back of the tractor and headed for the neighbours. And said it was a wild and windy ride and they were well and truly frozen by the time they got there. Mum was a bit worried about the baby coming, but Dad said not to worry, he delivered lots of calves. That didn't reassure Mum so much as she had seen Dad take a rope, a knife and a tractor while doing it. Mum and Dad settled into a workers' cottage on Kelso's farm and Scott arrived a bit early, but they were all organised. They later built a new home and moved back onto their property. I arrived later to finish the family of us 3 sons. They lived in Bloomsbury till Dad decided that dairying in Youngler would be easier. So they sold their property to their neighbours and bought a dairy farm at Youngler on Bee Creek Road in February 1973, just after I was born. So, over to you, Joss.
Pam and Seth built the dairy shed, bought the quota, bought dairy cows, and the milking began. Pam would often recall the antics that happened when Rodney and Scott were babysitting Mark while she and Seth milked, this including changing dirty nappies. She wondered how they all survived. Once Mark started school in 1978, Pam began work at Youngler State School. She would milk in the mornings from 4 a.m. and work at school all day to then return home to milk in the afternoons. Wow, what a day. This was until March 1991 when they sold the milk quota and the dairy cows to then change to beef cattle. At Youngler School, Pam changed the role of teacher aide and administration officer. Pam learnt the computer when the then principal dumped the first computer on their desk and said, "Put out a newsletter." There were 12 principals in at time and many teachers who were either on staff or visiting, and of course hundreds of school students had attended Youngler during Pam's 23 years of working at the school. She was a very well respected member of staff and always ready to show you the ropes and help out when necessary. One indication of her influence was when a former student, Dion Main, published his book Boomerang Gold in 2019, acknowledging Pam in his foreword. She was so thrilled, and better still, he autographed a copy for her. During these years, Pam saw her 3 boys find partners, which then resulted in 8 precious grandchildren: Liam, Braden, Kynan, Kaylee, Kalia, Brody, Tennessee and Kendall. Her and Seth thrived on being grandparents. Pam retired from working at Youngler School at the end of 2000 so she could permanently babysit. She was so excited to spend her retirement days filled with spoiling her grandchildren. She would take them to Cage, children's activity group of Youngler, to mix with the ladies at Youngler Craft Group, teach them to sew and play card games, feed them biscuits and party pies, and of course let them raid the drinks fridge. Her walls and shelf space was proudly decorated with their photos, and she loved nothing better than having the visiting them, celebrating their achievements, and the many family get-togethers with Rod and Tracy, Scott and Jocelyn, and Mark and Kirsty. Pam was never one to idle. She did a 6-week Justice of the Peace night course at the courthouse, an Uslan course, volunteered at Broken River, volunteered at Youngler State School P&C events as a grandparent, and volunteered at the Youngler Hall when she could. Pam was a keen gardener and loved colour, in particular the colour of purple. She really enjoyed her weekly ladies' craft and group and their outings. She developed some very close and special relationships with their ladies, and she truly treasured. Pam enjoyed playing games, in the particular rummy, sequence and 5 crown. She had a competitive streak and enjoyed to win. Pam also loved to travel, especially a cruise around the Pacific Islands, and wanted to do it all again someday. Pam was a rugby league fanatic. She loved her football. Heading to Townsville to watch Cowboys play was a highlight for her. She was loyal to Queensland, and if there was a game on the telly, no way she was going anywhere. All social engagements were off the agenda so she could watch the football. Pam was a huge fan of seafood. Prawns and oysters were her preferences, but any seafood would do. This closely related to her love of the beach. A special place to sit and watch the water. Of course, her and Sess also attended the balls at Youngler over the years, where they would dance the night away. Unfortunately, after 57 years of marriage, Sess passed away on the 26th of August 2018. This broke her heart. It was very quick and unexpected. Typical Pam looked on the bright side and said for the first time she could choose where she wanted to live. She started looking in Mackay and settled on a unit at Palmview Retirement Village. Pam had visited her sister-in-law Doreen at Palmview many times, so she was very excited to kick her heels up with all the social activities that they had to offer. She would also be closer to her sister, May, brother Jim, and many nieces and nephews who lived in town. Pam sold the farm at Bee Creek and moved to the retirement village in April 2020. Unfortunately, just as the COVID-19 virus hit, this put a dampener on the social activities she was planning on being involved with, although she still managed to be a part of the footy tipping comp. A couple of weeks after moving to Mackay, Pam was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. In typical Pam style, she didn't want to dwell on the negative. She wanted to live the rest of her time in the best way. She was so positive and so strong and so practical. At the time, she had already bought a new lounge that was on order and commented, "I hope I get to sit in my new lounge." Pam's remaining months were spent with family and friends. For those who shared some time with her, she was truly grateful. She enjoyed every moment of every visit. Pam touched many hearts, and we are all the richer for that. Just a note from our 2 girls now. Grandma, you was our last standing grandparent. I hope you have found Granddad up there. Maybe you've run into Pop and Mama and Nami as well. If you have, say g'day. A note from Tennessee. Whenever we went to your place, we would get spoilt with tucker and drinks. You would offer us sandwiches, but we wanted something better than that. Probably rubbish. Kendall, one day we went over to your place fencing with Dad. I was in Paul's buggy. I told you to get in and come for a drive, but you made out you was doing something else. I don't think you trusted my driving. Miss you and love you, Tennessee and Kendall.
I'd now like to invite Rodney and Tracy to come forward and share some words with us.
Thanks everybody coming. My name's Rodney. First up, I'd love to thank my wife Tracy for all the work she done, for looking after Mum. She done a wonderful job. Wasn't for her, we'd have to stick Mum into a home where she didn't want to go. She had to go through a lot, especially in the later. It was really bad, so I'd like to just thank Tracy for everything, and without her we couldn't have done it. Thank you. Righto, here we go. Mum was a very special lady to a lot of people. To me, she was a very special mum. I remember fondly of holidays that she would take us on as kids to Maryborough over Christmas, while Dad stayed at home to work. He'd take us to sports days and football, and take us to town so we would spend a week with our cousins, and you were like a taxi. But you always worked very hard, and you spent a lot of time milking cows at home and working at Youngler School. When you milked, you would put Scott and Mark in a box at the dairy, and I had to look after them. Yeah, and I had to change Mark's nappies. They were pretty vile sometimes. I used a broom a couple of times. You taught me responsibilities at a young age, but as I got older, you always taught me how to dance, which I was very grateful for sometimes that I still enjoy doing. Now this is for the kids. Liam, you know you were very lucky to have called you Grandma for over the last 28 years. You always made a grandchild feel loved and special. He loved spending time with you and just sitting and chatting, as you always had so much family stories to share. Liam's heart misses you so much, but his head knows that you are no longer in pain. He knows that you are now with Pop watching over all of us, but don't lessen sadness that you feel you'll never be able to see, hug and talk to you again. Braden, see you as an angel of the family who has found her wings. One of the wings responds to love and hope for your family, and the others as much to a fighter you are. Braden couldn't have asked for anything more as a grandson growing up. You looked after him and saw him through to the end of his schooling. He says you made a legacy together with Grandad, and hopes that you have returned for you have united with him, because you both deserve it. He loves you and miss you so much. Connor remembers you helping you in the garden, racing around the house from snakes and the lizards that were in his bed. When he slept over the house, he knew that he was to spoil and soft drink and ice cream and biscuits.
Which he couldn't get from home.
He's still bloody like that. And sign on the porch that grandkids get spoiled here was true. The funniest memory that he was jumping out the kitchen window only to find that they were locked out, and Grandad had to climb back in again to open up the door for you. Conan misses you so much. It is indescribable. Clea, could not ask for someone better to call Grandma. You were so special to her. Her earliest memories were that when you took her to her weekly craft club and her sewing and jewellery making lessons in the back room of your house. She didn't know how much to put up with, how you put up with all your grandchildren. Claire will always remind running up up to you and to guess which was a good and bad knee so she could sit on your lap without hurting. The sign of you nearly jumping out of your skin when she suddenly appeared in front of you made her day. She didn't have the worry about loud footsteps when sneaking up on you. When you moved to town, she didn't know what to do. There was nowhere for her to go when Tracy told her to clean her room. Clea hated the beach, but after you weekly trips to the beach, picnics, it was water meets the sand. She thought she could be happy. You looked excited.
You missed a whole line.
Yeah, well, that's all right. I'm trying to skip a frigging bit. When she bought you some oysters, spending days in the hospital by your side is something Clea never regretted. She thought you were so caring, supportive, loving, stubborn and strong. She is going to miss you, brightly smile and never fail to light up your room. Mum, you are amazing, Mum and Grandma. We all love you very much, and our hearts are broken. There we say goodbye.
Mother-in-law. Words that can send shivers up the strongest of spines, but not for me. I was one of the lucky ones. In 1993, I was transferred to a little school in Youngalla. When I arrived, I was to be teaching Year 3, 4, 5. The Year 6, 7 teaching principal, Paul Richardson, I already knew from a previous school. My flatmate, Amanda Smith, taught the Year 1 and 2. There was the cleaner, Lee Strack, and the teacher aides, Del Cunningham and Pam Stanieg. I was immediately welcomed into the Youngalla school family, and as you do in a small school, we became firm friends. As a teacher aide, Pam spent some time with me in my classroom. I quickly learnt that when I spoke to her across the room and she didn't respond, it was because I was on her bad side, as in her bad ear side. Pam had really bad hearing in one ear, but I could never remember which side it was. It made for interesting times in my class. Pam was a whiz with the computer and nothing was too much trouble, including the infamous regular, which we knew was so much work. I was often reminded that I needed some students' stories for that week's edition. Going into the staff room at lunchtimes, I would find a never-ending bowl of the most delicious mandarins, courtesy of Pam's tree at home. And at staff parties, I saw her cheeky side when there was a glass of Malibu or Baileys in her hand. At the end of 1993, when Rodney unexpectedly took me home after the last day of school, we found Seth out in the front yard in his horse and buggy and Pam at the front door. She called out in surprise, "Hello, what are you up to?" My reply was, "Oh, I've decided to stay for a bit longer." Seth said, "All right then, I'll hop on in," and he took me for a buggy ride around the paddock while Pam went inside to put the jug on. I was immediately accepted into the Stanieg family. Pam and Seth were the first people we called on Christmas morning in 1995 after Rod popped the question. Then it was Pam who came shopping with me to pick out my wedding dress. As I said in my wedding speech, I couldn't have handpicked better in-laws. When we told Pam and Seth that we were pregnant, Pam was ready to retire then and there to be our babysitter. She was so keen. I had to convince her that we didn't need her for some time, as in another 12 months. I will never forget the morning on the 31st of July 2000. Pam arrived at the hospital and sat in the corner of the room staring at me for hours, willing me to hurry up. After 21 hours of labour, Pam was the first to cuddle Braden outside the delivery room. So then it began. Braden, then subsequently Kynan and Kalia, grew up in Grandma and Granddad's house. When I went to work, they would spend the day with Grandma, which often included them accompanying her to the craft or her accompanying them to cage. As they grew older, we bought a set of walkie-talkies so they could walk over to Grandma's by themselves. They'd chat to me on the way over, then Grandma would join the conversation while sitting in her lounge room. As time went on, the kids tossed the talkies and would just disappear. This would conveniently happen when there were some jobs to be done. A phone call to Pam asking if my children were there would often result in finding out they were being spoilt with tea and biscuits or having free rein of the drinks fridge. As more time went on, they would still disappear at the most opportune times, but then the excuses were that they had to help out Grandma and Granddad with jobs, knowing that I wouldn't ask them to come home. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, Rodney and I are very grateful, and Braden, Kynan and Claire are very fortunate that they grew up with their grandparents being such a huge part of their lives. Pam was the best grandma ever. I was very lucky to have Pam across the road as well. With the boys away, Pam in her 60s at the time, me heavily pregnant, and a cow stuck upside down in a drain beside the road, we must have been a sight trying to rectify the problem. There was lots of huffing and pulling and laughing or trying to upright this cow with no success at all. Thanks to Fredo, who came to our rescue. Pam was my sewing mentor. I was very inexperienced and she was my teacher. Pam was my plant doctor. I was horrible with plants, and mind you, I still am. And Pam was my saviour. It was like a revolving plant door at times. I thought Pam was the answer to my problem of putting up Kalia's hair into pigtails when I broke my arm in 2011. After a disastrous go at it, I realised Pam always had short hair and 3 boys. Kynan took over the hair duties after that. However, Pam was my go-to person when I needed first aid. I will never forget the day when I tried to put a horse through a locked gate, throw in a couple of motorbikes coming up the road, and the result was some serious rope burn. When Rod and Trevor Angus came out of the dairy shed, checked out my hand, and Trev saying, "Holy shit, I've never seen one that bad before," I turned to Ron and said,
Let me frickin' horse go.
and I just said, "I'm going to see your mother." Pam, of course, was the one I turned to when the kids were sick and I needed some advice or reassurance. She was the one I shared successes and failures with. Pam was the neighbour I called for that tin of condensed milk or a packet of cocoa. She was the one I went over just for a cuppa and a chat. Pam was my inspiration. Caring, strong, determined, humble and graceful. Pam wasn't just my mother-in-law. She was a colleague, a friend, a neighbour, and she was family. And I would have been proud if I was able to call her my mum. Love you, Pam. Yep.
So I'll just finish off with my kids. They're a bit torn writing letters, so I've been instructed just to read the one. So we'll go through that from Kaylee. Grandma, it doesn't feel like you're gone. Maybe it's because we live so far from you, but it still feels like you're just a call away. It feels like after a short plane ride or a long drive, I can still pull the rope to the ring on the doorbell at your house and you would come to the front door with open arms, an open heart, and comments on how much us kids had grown. I know I don't have that luxury anymore, but what I do still have are the countless memories created with you over the years. From the many victories and defeats of Rummy Cub, to jumping in your waterbed to wake you up in the morning, to the time I made you so proud when I played the saxophone for you. So proud you cried. But above all, my favourite sight will always be seeing you after ringing the bell, running to your arms and feeling your love. That feeling will forever be in my heart. Goodbye, Grandma.
Is there anybody else who has some words they'd like to share at this time?
For those of you who don't know me, I am Pam's niece, Gail, daughter of her elder sister Jean. The Waltons were a very close family, and some of my fondest childhood memories were those of their family gatherings or excursions. There were holidays to Harvey Bay and Maryborough, picnics and fishing at the beaches, celebrations such as weddings, engagements and birthdays, etc. Regular visits to grandparents and midweek afternoon teas. Of all these, though, we were always most excited for our visits to Uncle Seth's and Auntie Pam's farm. Initially, it was Bongoola, near Bloomsbury. I can recall playing with all my cousins on the veranda of a big old farmhouse while the women laughed and chatted as they prepared lunch. After which we all walked down to the creek and the dairy before heading back to Mackay. It wasn't long after Seth and Pam moved to Youngla that our mother passed away, leaving 4 young children behind. It was then that Pam became a very special person in our lives. During school holidays, when our father was unable to take time off from work, Pam and Seth took us into their home and care. And on many of these school breaks, it was not only us, but other cousins too arrived, whose parents had to work. To this day, I am still impressed and in awe by how she managed with so many of us. Their modest family home was bursting at the seams. Along with their own 3 children, there were up to 11 others that frequented the farm during those stays. Meal times and bath time must have been mayhem. There wasn't any running hot water, so a metal bucket and an immerser did the trick. We doubled and tripled up in beds, with some top to toe, all of which led to fun and laughter late into the night or until Uncle Seth appeared in the doorway. He was always rousing on one or the other of us for something, or for one thing or another, often threatening to kick our behinds. I dare say we tested his patience at times, but not Auntie Pam, it seemed. Besides keeping house, working in the dairy, and she somehow managed to cook the meals, clean our clothes, tend to our cuts and bruises, and nurse us when we were sick. I can remember her sitting up half the night with me during my asthma attacks, making a steam tent and reassuring me I would be fine. During the days we played in the creek, walked to the waterfall, up to the shop. We'd like to go over to the dairy at milking time. They were fun times and wonderful memories. So today we give thanks for and celebrate Pam's life and remember the amazing person she was. A beautiful woman who gave so much of self to others. The generosity, care and love she showed us will ensure that Pamela's memory will remain in our hearts always. Love you, Pam.
Good morning. My name is Joan Lennox. I consider myself as a good friend of Pam's through craft. We were of the same ilk and the same age, and I'm hoping I represent all the craft ladies, past, present and future, of Youngalla. Pam was one of the initial founders of the Youngalla Craft Group back about 20 odd years ago, when the ladies met each Tuesday at the old caravan park, and then eventually moved onto the Hector headquarters, where our kindy operates at present. We then moved to the hall, where we still meet today, every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Being Tuesday today, by now Pam would have arrived, prepared the morning tea tray as everyone arrived, and the goodies would be laid out on the table, kettle boiling, tea and coffee made, everyone seated, and there would be lots and lots of chit-chat before we got down to business. I first met Pam back in 2004, when I just arrived from Mount Isa and was living out at Dalrymple Heights, and I happened to pick up one of the school's newsletters, and there was an invitation to the community to join the craft club, and it said phone Pam. So I did, and the rest is history. I met such a lovely group of crafty ladies along the way. We also saw a lot of the Youngalla youngsters. The youngsters grow up as their mums and grandmothers brought along their charges until they were old enough for school. We did do craft, and quite a bit. Each year we had a project, making Christmas gifts for the children in the community. When we became tired of sewing, knitting and crochet, we played cards or rummikub and had lots of laughs. And Pam loved a rummikub, and she was damn good at it too. This great group of crafty ladies have had many strings to their bows. Great cooks and workers, ready to step up when disasters and tough times happened, to lend a hand and take care of the emergency workers. Pam was up there with the rest of us. Our craft days will not be the same without Pam. She will be sadly missed. She has left us with great memories, many achievements and fun times. We will all be the better for having such a lovely lady in our lives. Dear Pam, you will always be in our heart.
On behalf of former Youngalla students, condolences to the Staniegs and all the family. Pam was the best teacher aide, as well as Del, but you guys meant so much to us, and we look forward to seeing the regular and seeing which stories made it that month. So all that hard work and cursing, we really appreciated it. There was several times, I guess, there was probably schoolyard brawls, and Del or Pam were on. It never reached the principal, and it was mainly between Rick and I, so we're always happy that Mum never found out either. So but we appreciate that. All the photos when you were down the beach, yeah, that was lovely stuff, and we all look forward to it and enjoy seeing everyone grow up, and the fact that Pam shared so much of her life with us and with the family, and it was great when she chose to go look after you grandkids. So you're very lucky, and what a great woman. So on behalf of the students and probably the parents as well, thanks so much.
Any other speakers? So I'd like to draw your attention now to the screens in front of you so that you can watch a photo journey of Pam's life with music specifically chosen by Pam herself.
That you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you why
I'm now going to invite the immediate family to come forward to say their last farewells by leaving flowers with Pam. They also do this on behalf of everybody here.
Some say love, it is a river that drowns the tender reed. Some say love, it is a razor that leaves your soul to bleed. Some say love, it is a hunger, an endless aching need. I say love, it is a flower, and you, it's only seed. It's the heart afraid of breaking that never learns to dance. It's the dream afraid of waking that never takes the chance. It's the one who won't be taken, who cannot seem to give, and the soul afraid of dying that never learns to live. When the night has been too lonely and the road has been too long, then you think that love is only for the lucky and the strong. Just remember in the winter, far beneath the bitter snow, lies the seed that with the sun's love in the spring becomes the rose. I dreamt you loved me still. Why did it feel so real? I can't forget it. I can't forget it. I dreamt this.
If there's any other family member we've missed, please come forward.
You looked at me the same. I was in heaven. I was in heaven. You don't see what you saw in me when you said you would never leave. That's what
We've heard stories of Pam's life lovingly shared by those who love her most. And here today, in just as in life, these stories have warmed our hearts, brought a smile to our faces and a tear to our eye. We've remembered the wonderful woman Pam was, how she loved and how she cared for everyone who crossed her path, how her door was always open, and how Cess and Pam's home felt like home to everyone who crossed their path. She freely shared her traditional values, life skills, old school games and traditions that will be part of her legacy in the generations to come. The home-cooked meals that were shared with her family, those by blood and those by choice, and the special occasions like a feast for Christmas dinner or lunch being prepared in the wee hours of the morning. She created lifelong memories in the hearts of so many children, grandchildren, students, siblings and friends because she loved unconditionally. Pam made the most of her final years without Cess and noticed and appreciated everything each and every one of you did for her. Perhaps we can take small comfort in thinking that Pam and Cess are back together again. Every person's life ends in the same way. It's only details of how she lived and how she died that distinguishes one from another. Whilst ever one person remembers Pam, she will never truly be gone. Life has to end. Love doesn't. A limb has fallen. Too soon a limb has fallen from this family's tree. I can almost hear Pam's voice saying, "Grieve not for me. Remember the best times, the laughter, the song, the good life lived while I was strong. Continue my heritage, I'm counting on you. Keep smiling, and surely the sun will shine through. My mind is at ease, my soul is at rest, remembering all how I was truly blessed. Continue the traditions no matter how small. Go on with your life, don't stare at the wall. I'll miss you all dearly, so keep your chin up until the day comes we're together again." I ask now that the pallbearers come forward. And then I'll ask that you each stand and wait as Pam makes her final journey from this building, and we'll continue with the ceremony. Please stand. Family and friends, there will be a small wake after this service, but due to COVID, there are restrictions and it's limited to only close family and friends. It'll be held at the City Bowls Club on the corner of Shakespeare and Shaw Street, which is just a few blocks down from the Shakespeare Hotel. This concludes today's service, and on behalf of Pam's family, I thank each and every one of you here for your presence, and I wish you a safe journey home. Thank you.